Jim Prentice is, of course, the Minister of Indian and Northern Affairs, but as much as that, he is also the chair of the Cabinet's Powerful Operations Committee. So in one sense, if there was a Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, or a Chief Operating Officer, if you like, it would be Mr. Prentice. And he's standing by in Calgary to talk about the kind of week we've seen, at least on the polls. Mr. Prentice, can there be any doubt in your mind now that your government should be going for a spring election? Because that's what I'm hearing from an awful lot of your MPs and even cabinet ministers.
Well, good day, Craig. It's less about polling numbers than it is about leadership. And what Canadians are seeing is a decisive Prime Minister, a decisive cabinet, a Prime Minister that's determined about the priorities of Canadians and that is moving this country forward in a positive way. And as you know from your many years in politics, it's less about polling numbers, it's about leadership for Canadians.
When you say it's about, you mean whether to have an election is about. But I mean, come on now. It looks like you're leaning toward a campaign in the spring if you can somehow get yourself defeated, are you not?
Well, good polling numbers are always good, but it is about providing Canadians with the sort of government that we promised. And the Prime Minister is decisive on all of the issues that matter to Canadians, on the question of terrorism, on protecting the economy, on the environment, on the tax measures that benefit hardworking Canadians. So on all of these items, Canadians are seeing a Prime Minister and a government that's decisive, that is really moving forward on the agenda of Canadians, and they're obviously pleased by that.
Do you see a majority in the polls we've been looking at this week?
Well, I see a very busy month ahead, Craig. I see the budget coming, of course, later in the month. John Baird has spoken about his plans relative to the environment in the month ahead. So it's going to be a month that Canadians will be able to take stock of how this government is moving forward in a very activist way. And we are anxious to make this Parliament work. We have said that all along. We have a very active agenda that needs parliamentary approval. And it's up to the opposition parties, and Stéphane Dion in particular, to make choices.
Now, it seems to me that there aren't that many Canadians complaining about a minority parliament. In fact, one begins to believe that a lot of Canadians like minorities because it allows them to keep a really tight check on governments. Does that worry you that Canadians seem to, these days, prefer minority governments when obviously you would like something a lot more than that?
Well, I think from my experience knocking on doors, and I was out door knocking yesterday, what Canadians really want to see is a government that's taking action on their agendas. And the first and foremost priority that we have is to be protective of Canadians, to protect the economy, to protect the environment, to protect them from terrorism. If the minority parliament is serving those ends, Canadians would be satisfied. Increasingly, what we're seeing from the Liberals, from Stéphane Dion, is a party that does not have a strong leader, that is not reflecting the priorities of Canadians.
So I gather you feel that the choice of Mr. Dion has given you a boost in terms of polls and in terms of Canadian public opinion. Do you feel that Mr. Dion is failing as a leader of a national party?
Well, I sit in the House of Commons beside a leader. Canadians know that. This is a man that says what he thinks and acts and does what he promises. I look across the floor of the House of Commons and I do not see a strong leader. I see a Liberal Party that increasingly is soft on terrorism, is soft on crime, does not share the budgetary priorities of hardworking Canadians, and is increasingly out of step with Canadians. I've had the good fortune to travel across the country over the last several weekends in other riding associations, and there is a sense of that across this country.
Well, I'm not, of course, surprised that you'd say that about Mr. Dion, but many people are saying that the values of the Conservative Party, as espoused by Mr. Harper and others, really are missing something about Canadian mainstream values. Should that concern you if you're moving toward a spring election?
This Prime Minister is providing a government that really does reflect the priorities of Canadians. And, in terms of the budget, this is a government that respects the taxpayers and respects the interests of hardworking tax-paying Canadians. On terrorism and on crime, this is a government that is protective of the security of Canadians. And in terms of things like the environment, this is a government that wishes to strike the appropriate balance between, on the one hand, protecting the environment and being a world leader, and on the other hand, protecting our energy security and our economy. So in this sense, this is a government that definitely reflects the priorities of Canadians, and that's why you're seeing the sort of momentum that you're seeing.
Where does a Quebec election fit into what you see as momentum on your side in terms of the polls? Where does that fit into your plans, your strategy for an election campaign?
Well, we all wait to see how the Quebec election turns out, but you know, again, coming back to the importance of a prime minister and a government that is decisive and is determined, we see at this point that federalism is stronger in this country than it has in many years, and this prime minister and the steps that he has taken really are a core part of that. Okay,
let's assume, as I do, and as more and more people are doing, that you're going for a spring election. How do you get yourself defeated when the Prime Minister has been saying he doesn't want an election? You say you're managing to get your mandate fulfilled. How do you get an election engineered?
Well, we're back, Craig, to making this Parliament work. I mean, that's the point I make, is that this is going to be a very interesting month with the budget occurring and with some of the other issues that are in front of the House of Commons. We've assured Canadians that we want to make this minority Parliament work. We want to reflect their priorities. The legislative agenda that we've brought forward is one of the most proactive in the last 15 years in Canadian politics. It does reflect the priorities of Canadians, and we're going to take it to Parliament, try to make Parliament work, and it's up to Stéphane Dion to make choices if he's able.
Mr. Prentice, thanks for doing this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Bye for now.